Every cell in your body replaces itself every 7 to 10 years. The skin you wear today is not the skin you wore a decade ago. The bones that hold you upright have rebuilt themselves atom by atom. Biologically speaking, you are already someone new. Yet here you are, carrying the same fears, the same limiting beliefs, the same version of yourself that stopped working years ago. The body knows how to let go and rebuild. Why don't we? We cling to outdated versions of ourselves like artifacts in a museum, carefully preserved behind glass, untouched by the chaos of transformation. We defend our old patterns as if they were precious heirlooms, when in truth, they are shackles we mistake for jewelry. The Stoics understood something we have forgotten in our modern age of comfort and distraction. They knew that to become who you are meant to be, you must first kill who you used to be. Not metaphorically, not eventually, now. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals words that were never meant for public consumption. He wrote them to himself, in moments of brutal self-honesty that most of us avoid our entire lives. He said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But before you can retreat into that fortress of inner peace, you must first clear out the occupants who do not belong there. The version of you that seeks approval from people who do not matter. The version that makes excuses instead of progress. The version that mistakes comfort for contentment. These versions must die. This is not about self-improvement in the way the modern world sells it to you. This is not about adding more to who you are, stacking credentials and accomplishments like layers of paint over rotting wood. This is about demolition, controlled, purposeful destruction of everything that keeps you small. The Stoics called this practice negative visualization, but it went deeper than imagining loss. It was about recognizing what was already dead within you and having the courage to bury it. Think about the person you were 5 years ago. The things that mattered to you then. The goals you chased. The people you tried to impress. Now ask yourself honestly, how much of that version still lives inside you, making decisions, whispering doubts, pulling you backwards into a life you have already outgrown? We carry these ghosts with us, and they haunt every choice we make. The job you stay in because the 22-year-old version of you thought it was impressive. The relationship you maintain because ending it would mean admitting the person who started it made a mistake. The habits you repeat because they once served a version of you that no longer exists. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher who served as advisor to emperors and survived exile, understood the weight of identity. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But the deepest suffering comes from living in service to an imagination of yourself that has expired. You imagine you are still the person who needs certain things, fears certain outcomes, requires certain validations. And in that imagination, you suffer the death of 1,000 possibilities because you refuse to let one version of yourself die. The modern man is drowning in options but starving for transformation. We have more resources, more information, more opportunities than any generation in human history, yet we feel more trapped than ever. Why? Because we keep trying to renovate a structure that needs to be torn down. We read the books, listen to the podcasts, attend the seminars, all while remaining fundamentally the same person underneath. We add tools to a workshop we never use. We collect wisdom like trophies while our lives remain unchanged. The Stoic Rebirth is not an addition. It is a subtraction. It is not about becoming more. It is about becoming different. Epictetus, who went from slave to one of the most influential philosophers in history, taught his students a simple but devastating truth. It is impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows. You cannot become someone new while clutching the identity of who you were. You cannot transform while protecting the very things that need to be destroyed. So what does it actually mean to kill the old you? It starts with recognition. You must first see clearly what is dead and what is alive within you. Most people never do this inventory. They operate on autopilot, running programs installed by a younger, less experienced version of themselves, never questioning whether those programs still serve them. Take a moment right now, not later, not when it is convenient, but now. What are you defending about yourself that no longer serves who you want to become? What story are you telling yourself about your limitations that is really just a story told by someone you used to be? If you find yourself getting uncomfortable right now, good. That discomfort is the signal. It means you are approaching something true. The Stoics did not shy away from discomfort. They walked toward it purposefully, knowing that on the other side of every comfortable lie was an uncomfortable truth worth facing. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But that power only becomes accessible when you stop identifying with the mind you have been operating with and recognize that you can rebuild it entirely. Here is what nobody tells you about transformation. It is not inspiring at first. It is terrifying. When you begin to dismantle the version of yourself you have known for years, there is a period of emptiness. A void where the old you used to be, and the new you has not yet fully formed. Most people panic in this space. They rush back to familiar patterns, rebuild the old walls, convince themselves that who they were is good enough. This is where most transformations die, not from lack of desire but from lack of tolerance for the unknown. The Stoics prepared for this. They practiced what they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They imagined worst-case scenarios not to cultivate fear but to build resilience. They knew that the death of the old self would be uncomfortable, so they made friends with discomfort before it arrived. You must do the same. Sit with the idea that everything you think you know about yourself might be wrong. Sit with the possibility that the life you have been living is not the life you were meant for. Sit with the terror that comes from realizing you have been your own prison guard. Before we go deeper into how to execute this rebirth, I want you to consider subscribing if this resonates with you. We explore these ancient principles every week, not as abstract philosophy, but as practical tools for living with power and purpose in a world that wants you distracted and diminished. This is not content for casual consumption. This is a commitment to transformation. The execution of the old self requires a method, a process, a ritual. The Stoics were not abstract thinkers lost in theory. They were practitioners, men who applied philosophy to the chaos of real life. They faced wars, political intrigue, exile, and death with a framework that turned obstacles into opportunities. That same framework can guide your rebirth, but only if you apply it with the same intensity they did. First, you must audit your life with ruthless honesty. Not the surface-level honesty you practice when someone asks how you are doing and you say, fine. The deep, bone-cutting honesty that reveals what you have been hiding from yourself. The Stoics kept journals for this exact purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations as a private dialogue with himself, dissecting his own thoughts, calling out his own weaknesses, reminding himself of principles when he started to drift. You need the same practice. Get a journal, not a digital note, but something physical that requires you to slow down. Every morning or every evening, write 3 questions and answer them with complete honesty. First, what did I do today that the person I want to become would not have done? Second, what did I avoid today that the person I want to become would have confronted? Third, what story am I telling myself to justify remaining the same? Do this for 30 days without exception, and you will begin to see patterns. The same excuses, the same avoidances, the same comfortable lies. These patterns are the blueprint of your old self. Once you see them clearly, you can begin to dismantle them. Second, you must cut the associations that reinforce your old identity. This is where most people fail, not because they lack will, but because they underestimate the power of environment. Epictetus said, "If you wish to improve, be content to appear foolish and dumb." The people in your life right now know you as you are. They have expectations. They have a version of you in their mind, and every time you try to change, they will unconsciously pull you back to the familiar version. Not because they are malicious, but because your change threatens their stability. If you can transform, it means they could too, and most people are not ready to face that possibility. You do not need to cut everyone out of your life dramatically. But you must become highly selective about who gets access to your transformation. Share your new principles with people who are also committed to growth. Protect your evolution from people who will mock it, question it, or subtly sabotage it with their doubts. The Stoics surrounded themselves with other philosophers, not because they were elitist, but because transformation requires a different atmosphere than maintenance. You need people who will challenge you to become more, not comfortable you into remaining the same. Third, you must replace old patterns with new practices immediately. Nature abhors a vacuum. When you kill the old version of yourself, something will rush in to fill that space. If you do not intentionally choose what fills it, your old patterns will simply resurrect themselves under new names. This is why people who quit one addiction often develop another. The underlying pattern remains unchanged, just wearing different clothes. Choose 3 practices that define the person you are becoming. Not goals, not achievements, practices. Daily actions that build the new you through repetition. For Marcus Aurelius, it was his morning meditation on Stoic principles. For Seneca, it was his evening review of the day's events. For Epictetus, it was constant attention to what was within his control and what was not. What will it be for you? Maybe it is training your body every morning before the day begins, building the discipline that will carry into everything else. Maybe it is reading philosophy for 30 minutes each day, training your mind to think in principles instead of reactions. Maybe it is practicing silence, learning to sit with your thoughts without reaching for distraction. Whatever you choose, commit completely. The old you was built through years of repeated actions. The new you will be built the same way. There are no shortcuts in identity formation. You become what you practice, not what you intend. The Stoics understood this deeply. They did not talk about virtue abstractly. They practiced virtue daily until it became their nature. You must do the same with whatever principles define your new self. Fourth, you must accept that this death will be painful and that the pain is necessary. We live in a culture obsessed with painless transformation. Quick fixes, life hacks, easy paths to difficult destinations. The Stoics would have found this absurd. They knew that anything worth having required something worth sacrificing. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." The difficulty of killing your old self strengthens the new self that emerges. The struggle is not something to avoid or shortcut. It is the mechanism of transformation itself. When you feel the pull to return to old patterns, and you will feel it intensely, do not fight it with willpower alone. Willpower is a limited resource. Instead, remind yourself of the principles that guide your new identity. This is why the Stoics repeated their core teachings constantly. Not because they forgot them, but because remembering them in moments of temptation is what separates philosophy from mere intellectual entertainment. Have your principles written somewhere you see them daily. When the old you whispers that the change is too hard, that you can start again tomorrow, that who you are is good enough, read those principles aloud. Ground yourself in the truth you have chosen to live by. 5th, celebrate the deaths, not just the births. We are taught to celebrate achievements, milestones, new beginnings. But the Stoics understood that letting go is often more significant than gaining something new. When you successfully reject an old pattern, acknowledge it. When you choose differently than your old self would have, mark it. Not with indulgence or reward in the conventional sense, but with recognition. Write it down. Tell someone you trust. Build a record of the old self dying and the new self taking its place. This record will become your evidence when doubt arrives, and doubt always arrives. As we reach the midpoint of this journey together, I want to pause and ask you something. Are you truly ready for this? Not intellectually ready, but actually ready to become someone different? Because if you are, then what comes next will give you the remaining tools you need. And if you are not ready, that is okay too. Transformation cannot be forced. It can only be chosen. But if you stay with us, if you subscribe and commit to this path, we will walk it together. Not as teacher and student, but as fellow travelers on the hardest journey there is. The journey from who we are to who we are capable of becoming. The middle stage of rebirth is the most dangerous. The old you is dying but not yet dead. The new you is emerging but not yet formed. You exist in a liminal space, caught between identities, vulnerable to collapse back into familiar patterns. This is where the Stoic principles become not just philosophy but survival tools. Without them, you will almost certainly fail. With them, you have a chance at becoming something rare, someone who actually transforms instead of just talking about it. Marcus Aurelius faced this middle space constantly. As Emperor of Rome, he could have justified any behavior, indulged any impulse, avoided any discomfort. Yet he chose daily to kill the version of himself that craved easy power and birth the version that served principle over preference. In his private writings, he reminded himself, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. B1. This is the key to surviving the middle stage. Stop debating internally about who you should become. Act as that person now, even when it feels false, even when the old you screams that you are pretending. You are not pretending. You are practicing. Every great musician sounds terrible when learning a new instrument. Every great athlete looks awkward when learning a new technique. The new you will feel uncomfortable at first. Your old neural pathways have been carved deep through years of repetition. Creating new pathways takes time and conscious effort. But here is what the Stoics knew that modern psychology has confirmed. Your brain cannot tell the difference between who you are and who you are practicing being. Act as the new version of yourself consistently enough, and your brain will begin to accept that identity as real. The neurons that fire together wire together. You are literally rebuilding your brain with every choice that aligns with your new identity. But the old you will not go quietly. It will mount counterattacks, especially in moments of stress or weakness. You will have days when every cell in your body wants to return to familiar patterns. The job you want to quit will seem tolerable again. The relationship you know you need to end will seem fixable. The habits you are trying to break will whisper that moderation is possible, that you can manage them, that you are being too extreme. This is the old you fighting for survival. It knows that if you continue on this path, it will cease to exist. And like any organism facing extinction, it will fight desperately. The Stoics had a practice for this exact moment. They called it the view from above. When caught in the intensity of a moment, they would mentally zoom out, seeing themselves from a distance, seeing their entire life from a cosmic perspective. From that view, the pull of old patterns reveals itself as trivial. The temporary comfort you gain from returning to who you were is nothing compared to the permanent regret of staying someone you have outgrown. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The fear of letting go of your old self is almost always worse than the actual experience of letting go. Practice the view from above when you feel yourself weakening. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. In one version, you gave in to the old patterns, returned to the comfortable prison of who you were. In another version, you pushed through this difficult middle stage and emerged as the person you have been trying to become. Which version do you want to meet? Which version will thank you for the choice you make right now? The Stoics used this visualization not as fantasy but as decision-making tool. They made choices based on who they wanted to become, not who they happened to be in that moment. Another critical tool for the middle stage is reframing failure. You will fail. You will have days when you act exactly like the old version of yourself. You will make the same mistakes, fall into the same patterns, wonder if transformation is even possible. The difference between people who successfully rebirth themselves and those who give up often comes down to what they do after failure. The old paradigm treats failure as evidence that you cannot change. The Stoic paradigm treats failure as data, information about which circumstances trigger old patterns, which practices need strengthening, which associations need more distance. Epictetus taught his students that every setback contains a hidden lesson if you look for it. He said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you fail to show up as the new you, do not spiral into self-judgment. That is the old you trying to regain control through shame. Instead, examine what happened clinically, like a scientist studying an experiment. What were the conditions that led to the old pattern? What was missing that could have prevented it? What practice do you need to strengthen? Then adjust and continue. The old you dies through 1,000 small choices, not one perfect decision. You must also guard against the trap of partial transformation. This is perhaps the most insidious obstacle. You make some changes, feel some progress, and then plateau. You become a slightly better version of your old self instead of a truly new person. This happens because partial transformation feels good enough. It relieves some pressure without requiring the full discomfort of complete rebirth. You lose some weight but not enough to truly transform your health. You improve your career but not enough to escape work that drains your soul. You develop some new habits but keep enough old ones to maintain your familiar identity. The Stoics warned against this mediocrity constantly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Note the absoluteness of this statement. Not mostly right, or somewhat true. The Stoic standard is total alignment between principle and practice. This does not mean perfection. It means complete commitment. When you commit partially, you guarantee partial results. When you commit completely, you give yourself a chance at complete transformation. How do you know if you are falling into partial transformation? Ask yourself this question. Am I proud of who I am becoming, or am I just less ashamed of who I was? Pride in your new identity, not arrogant pride but quiet self-respect, indicates real change. Reduced shame without actual pride indicates you are simply managing your old identity better, not transforming it. The goal is not to make your prison more comfortable. The goal is to leave the prison entirely. As we move into the final section of this script, I want to remind you that this work is not done alone. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, because we release new content every week that supports this journey. These are not motivational speeches designed to make you feel good for 10 minutes. These are operational philosophies designed to make you different permanently. The Stoics built their teachings for application, not entertainment. We do the same. The final stage of rebirth is integration. The old you is dead. The new you has been practiced into existence. Now comes the test of whether this transformation will last or whether you will slowly drift back to who you were. This is where most people fail, not dramatically but gradually. They win the battle of initial transformation but lose the war of sustained identity. The Stoics understood that maintenance is as important as creation. A garden planted but not tended returns to wilderness. An identity created but not maintained returns to default. Integration requires building systems that support your new identity automatically. Willpower and motivation are unreliable. They fluctuate based on mood, circumstance, stress. Systems do not care about your feelings. They operate regardless of whether you feel inspired or depleted. Marcus Aurelius built a system of morning meditation and evening review that operated whether he felt like it or not. Seneca built a system of regular correspondence with friends that kept him accountable to his principles. Epictetus built a system of teaching that forced him to embody the wisdom he shared. What systems will keep your new identity alive? Start with your environment. Design your physical space to make old patterns difficult and new patterns easy. If you are becoming someone who reads deeply instead of scrolling mindlessly, remove the apps from your phone and place books where you used to place your device. If you are becoming someone who trains their body, prepare your workout clothes the night before and remove friction from the process. The old you was supported by environmental cues that made bad habits easy. The new you needs environmental cues that make good habits easy. Do not rely on conscious choice for everything. Build a world where the right choices are automatic. Next, establish non-negotiable rituals. The Stoics were big on ritual, not religious ritual but personal ceremony that marked the significance of daily practices. Your morning routine should be a ritual that reminds you who you are now. Your evening review should be a ritual that assesses how well you embodied that identity today. Rituals create boundaries between the old life and the new life. They signal to your subconscious that this transformation is serious, permanent, worthy of ceremony. Without ritual, transformation becomes just another thing you tried once. The integration stage also requires you to define clear boundaries with your past. People from your old life will want you to be who you were. Not maliciously, but because it is comfortable for them. You must be willing to disappoint them. You must be willing to be misunderstood. Seneca wrote to a friend, "If you wish to be loved, love." But he also understood that authentic love sometimes means allowing others to be uncomfortable with your growth. You cannot maintain your new identity while managing everyone else's expectations of your old identity. Choose which person you will be, and accept that not everyone will understand or approve. This does not mean being harsh or cutting people off dramatically. It means being clear. When someone treats you like the old version of yourself, gently but firmly correct them. When someone tries to pull you into old patterns, decline without explanation or apology. You do not owe anyone access to a version of yourself that no longer exists. The people who truly care about you will adjust. The people who only cared about what you could do for them will drift away. Let them. The loss is necessary for the integration to complete. Another critical element of integration is building proof. The old you will occasionally whisper doubts. Did you really change or are you just pretending? In these moments, you need evidence. Keep a record of the new actions you have taken. Document the old patterns you have rejected. Collect examples of the new identity in action. This is not about ego or validation from others. This is about having concrete proof for yourself when doubt arrives. The Stoics kept detailed journals partly for this reason. When Marcus Aurelius questioned whether he was living up to his principles, he could review his record and see the truth. Your proof should include both actions and outcomes. Actions you control directly. Outcomes you influence but do not control completely. Track the new behaviors, but also notice how your life changes as a result. The new you should produce different results than the old you. If you have genuinely transformed, your relationships should shift, your work should improve, your inner experience should change. If nothing external changes, question whether the internal change is real. Transformation is not just mental. It manifests in the material reality of your life. The Stoics also practiced gratitude as a tool for integration. Not shallow gratitude for good things, but deep appreciation for the struggle of transformation itself. Epictetus taught that difficulties are not obstacles but opportunities to practice virtue. Every time you faced the choice between old patterns and new identity and chose the new identity, you strengthened that identity. Be grateful for those moments. They are the building blocks of who you have become. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Extend that gratitude to the privilege of becoming someone new. As your new identity integrates, you will notice something remarkable. The actions that once required enormous effort become natural. The choices that once demanded constant vigilance become automatic. This is not because transformation gets easier. It is because you are no longer transforming. You have transformed. The new you is not something you are practicing anymore. It is who you are. The Stoics called this state living in accordance with nature, meaning living in alignment with your highest potential. It feels effortless because it is authentic, no longer a performance but an expression of your true self. But here is the final truth the Stoics want you to understand. This process never truly ends. The moment you believe you have fully arrived, you stop growing. The moment you think the old you is completely dead and can never return, you become vulnerable. Marcus Aurelius remained emperor for nearly 2 decades, and he wrote in his final entries with the same vigilance he wrote in his first. He never stopped examining himself, never stopped killing the parts that needed to die, never stopped birthing new capacities. The rebirth is not a single event. It is a way of living. So where does this leave you? If you have followed this path, truly followed it, you are not the person who started reading these words. That person is dead. The person reading this now has a choice. Will you maintain this new identity with the same intensity you used to create it? Will you build the systems, establish the rituals, set the boundaries, collect the proof? Or will you let this be another inspiring message that changes nothing? The Stoics were obsessed with the gap between knowing and doing. Knowledge without action is not philosophy. It is entertainment. If this script has given you knowledge, your only debt is action. Kill what needs to die within you. Birth what needs to live. Repeat until your last breath. That is the Stoic path. That is the only path that matters. Subscribe to this channel for weekly insights into applied Stoic philosophy. This is not content for passive consumption. This is fuel for active transformation. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it, someone stuck in an old identity, someone ready to die and be reborn. And most importantly, go do the work. The old you is waiting to die. The new you is waiting to live. Stop reading. Start executing.